Marvel blames Disney for recent film and TV failures, using the exact same excuses as Star Wars. Because nothing is ever my fault. It is always some outside force. It's not has nothing to do with the decisions that I am making. Yes, it is the fact that nobody liked my meatloaf. It has nothing to do with the fact that this doesn't actually have any meat in it, and I put too much seasoning. No, it is they should like my tofu meatless meatloaf, and the fact that they don't like it, it has something to do with them, not me. All executives and employees are blaming the Walt Disney Company and its recent film and TV failures. In an expose in the Wall Street Journal, claimed that the Marvel Studios boss Kevin Feige is putting the blame on Bob Iger, executives at Marvel's parent company, the Walt Disney Company. For studios' recent failures, specifically, Feige is blaming Disney for forcing them to churn out as much content as possible for its Disney Plus streaming service. In Marvel's heyday, they were putting out a bunch of stuff. People just liked it, and it was better written. So it's not about how much stuff you are putting out; it is the quality of the things that you are putting out. And you decided to force through the message and everything that you did. You destroyed all your characters. Like you make Captain Marvel character nobody likes in comic books. You decided to make her into your version of Superman. She has no flaws other than she had failed memory. You completely destroyed how the Avengers were created. You completely destroyed how Nick Fury lost his eye. If you had actually told kind of the story that was implied in damn, I hate being old. It is in what's the name of this damn? What is Bucky? I can't remember. The Winter Soldier. If you decided to tell a story that was implied in Winter Soldier, that would have been a good story. What you told was stupid, and having him lose his eyeball to a space cat, and then so stop blaming Disney. Well, I would hope that Disney didn't tell you to do all of that. According to the report, believes this content overwhelmed and alienated viewers. Furthermore, the team allegedly stretched and diluted the quality of their output. If the quality was diluted because you kept changing your mind, hence the reason why she got fired. The lady who was in charge of all that, they kept changing their mind about stuff because they kept trying to add more woke stuff to everything. Therefore, you never gave the people who were making the special effects enough time to actually make good product. Therefore, they got pooped on by everybody because the product was bad, and because you kept changing your mind and you didn't have an actual story, which James Gunn used to talk about. It's like you ran, once Kevin Feige ran everybody else out, he couldn't, whoever was left couldn't really tell a coherent story. And that's why there was a remarkable difference between the first four phases of the MCU and the fifth one. And the TV shows are bad. It was just a lot of bad. It even claims that Feige agreed to the plan because of his zealousness to tell more stories and a desire to be an excellent corporate citizen. As the studio being strategic, claims that Feige has the final decision maker for each Disney Plus show, and the studio is creating, and he would overturn weeks of work with little to no time to implement the changes before the show needed to meet its deadlines. So again, it's not my fault, even though I kept doing this. But even claims staffers chased him down in the hallways in order to get answers. At this point, Secret Invasion director Ali Selim informed Insider back in 2023 that his show was being cobbled together in the editing room as they were releasing new episodes every week. He asked from what other Marvel directors and actors have said. Sometimes things in the scripts change at the last minute or the day of filming. What was your experience like for Secret Invasion? How closely did it follow all the scripts, and how much room was there for improvisation or adjustments? I don't want to play semantic games, but I think of it as an evolution as you hunt down a story. Everything is constantly evolving. It is a fascinating process, and I guess there are moments of improv, like between Sam and Don, between Sam and Ben, and their really rich moments of improv. There are actors who rely more on the script, and I think as we were editing, we were still finding the story, which is why it sucked. The Pixar in its heyday, it would take I think around 3 to 4 years for them to make a movie. The first year and a half to 2 years was just on the story. They did some voice work, they did some of this, some of that, character designs, yada yada yada. But they focused mostly on the story and the storyboards. So by the time they actually got to the animation part, they had the movie down pat. They knew what they wanted to do, so they didn't really need to make any changes unless something happened where they had to. That's why the movies work. This is insane. If every Marvel product is like this, no wonder they all suck. Because there's no you need a solid middle of the story to put like the framework in order for everything else to go on top, and then you can make your improvisations. It's like when you're cooking. You need to understand how to actually make the whatever you're making the proper way first. Once you understand how to make it the proper way first, so it tastes like it's supposed to taste, then you can add stuff to it and make it your own. If you don't have that, then you wind up with the mess that this show was, where at the end you have an all-powerful person just floating in the MCU who has everybody's powers. She is the super duper duper scroll. So how are you going to explain that from now on? So every time anything happens, well, how come she didn't show up? She exists. She has everybody's powers. She's super strong. She seems to know how to use everybody's powers. I mean, and when I say she has everybody's powers, she actually has every person in the MCU who has shown any kind of ability. She has all of their powers. From the aliens to the mutants to the Asgardians, like everybody. So, all right, they just fought the Sentry and the Thunderbolts or the New Avengers. Where was she at? This thing is going around New York City killing everything. How come she didn't show up to fight it? I mean, this is her adoptive planet now, but she just don't give a shit. And if she don't give a shit, that's bad, because you got this super power person floating on the moon who just don't care. But that's how this works. Is like they don't really think about any of that stuff. That's what you got to think about. It's like, okay, if you're going to make a story that is evolving constantly, that is tied into a bunch of other stories, you have to think about, okay, well, how can somebody else use this? That's why I said, like earlier, if you have small contained stories that go towards the character, so therefore you don't really need to explain why other folks didn't come and like do anything about this, because it wasn't a world changing event for everyone. It was just a world changing event for that particular character. So therefore, it may not even be on the radar for Black Widow or Tony Stark if something happens. So, and I think as we're editing, we're still finding the story. We're still finding the story in episode 6 up until episode 1 already aired, and that's part of the beauty of it. That is not good. None of that statement is good. Nothing. You do not have a foundation for your story. If you're just finding the story, that means you shouldn't have filmed anything. You shouldn't have filmed nothing before you found out what story you wanted to tell. Which basically is the reason why, and I know I keep going back and forth, why the first part of Game of Thrones worked, because they had a solid basis for the story, and why the last 2.5 seasons sucked, because they didn't. So they were improvising and trying to make up stuff based on like thin, shallow outlines given to them by George R.R. Martin. And that's why it didn't work. So that they made silly decisions, like having Arya kill the Night King instead of Jon. You built up for Jon to do it, and because you changed your mind and didn't want to do the cliche thing, you decided to go another route, and everyone hated it when you did that, because just like this person, you're just finding the story, which makes absolutely no damn sense. All right. Disney CEO Bob Iger previously spun this narrative during the New York Times Deal Book Summit. In the interview, he said, "Our particularly in our particularly case, and specifically about some of those films, they were not as good, not as high in quality as some of their predecessors. Our films, and as they should have been." Wow. Particularly in this environment. So I don't know that. Okay, that's some interesting structure there. The world was shot during COVID. There was not as much supervision on the set, so to speak, where we will have executives really looking over what's being done day to day after day after day, and result mostly of COVID. But at the same time, we increased our output tremendously to feed streaming platforms. Too much, by the way, definitely a mistake. Quality needs attention to deliver quality, and it doesn't happen by accident. And quantity, in our case, diluted quality, and Marvel suffered greatly from that. Yeah, there was nothing that any executive at Disney was going to be able to add to this, when the people who are supposedly the creative don't even have a damn story nailed down while they're like 6 episodes into the damn show. Yeah, so there's nothing that Bob Iger could have told them that was going to fix that. The way they completely destroyed this man. Like, seriously, they completely destroyed him. And I don't know why Samuel Jackson let them do it. They screwed up Rhodey, because it's the thing about Marvel now is like they don't actually look at anybody else's stuff. They used to do that. So they didn't make as many mistakes in the past as they do now, because they don't seem to look at anybody else's stuff. So they don't know. It's like, dude, it makes no sense for the Skrull Rhodey to be that damn affected by Tony Stark dying because he wasn't her best friend. So I guess she's a really good actress. It's like, none of it made any sense. Wall Street Journal reported that trotted out the tire fatigue narrative, randomly citing a 23-year-old social media manager named Leslie Rodriguez, who said, I loved it for many years, but after the TV shows and everything, it just started to getting a little confusing and all over the place. Yes, back to previous thing. James Gunn mentioned something in the past about how they didn't really have any story. Like, nothing was really tied in an overall arc. And that was your biggest thing, was the overall arch of this story. So they didn't actually do that anymore. So yeah, of course it got confusing, because nobody looked at anybody else's stuff. Everybody was doing their own damn thing, and you screwed up storylines that were already baked in place with no explanation for anything. It's like, why did Ms. Marvel just disappear? Captain Marvel just disappear and never came back to her home planet to find out what was going on. How did the Skrulls just show up on Earth and nobody noticed? And there's something new in Disney. They tried to decide with Lucasfilm. Star Wars found a significant decline in negative audience reactions to Disney's Star Wars trilogy, and specifically the box office bomb that was. I guess the train is deciding to go by. So yeah, here's getting into Marvel. That's what's crazy about this is no one seems to accept that. Why? Well, maybe what we did was incorrect in terms of we don't really know what we're doing. So probably need to go back to the storyboard and figure out, it's like, all right, what are we doing wrong? Instead of just forging ahead and just doing your damn thing and hoping for the best.